Baha'u'lláh, the prophet founder of the Baha'i revelation, seems to have written the very first Emancipation Proclamation in human history. In the year 2013, the renowned scholar, Professor Nadir Saidi, discovered in the archives of the Baha'i World Center a tablet Baha'u'lláh wrote as early as 1839, when as a young man of 22 years, he became the head of his family upon the death of his father. One of his first acts as head of household was to free the enslaved African servants in his father's household. In 1839, slavery was legal and prevalent in all the world, both East and West. Moreover, 1839 was 5 years before the Bab's declaration of his mission, inaugurating the Baha'i faith. And yet, here is Baha'u'lláh in his first writing that we have by him, written 13 years before the onset of his mission in 1853, foreshadowing his enlightened teachings which exploded the false concept of human identity. Teachings which exploded the false concept of human identity that people had lived by for centuries. A false concept of human identity that had caused and continues to cause untold suffering, bigotry, and bloodshed. What is that false concept? Well, as far back as the first chapter of the first book of the Bible, humanity has been told that we were made in the image and likeness of God. The sun, as the source of all light and life, throughout history has been the perfect metaphor for the prime mover, the unknowable essence that we tend to call God. To continue that metaphor, then, we might say that human beings are as mirrors created to reflect the sun's image and likeness of light and warmth. The rays of the divine sun are godly attributes, such as justice, compassion, generosity, trustworthiness. But historically, instead of choosing to identify with those spiritual qualities that are the image and likeness of God, humanity has preferred to identify itself materially and biologically. People throughout history have defined themselves by nationality, by race, by class, gender, religion. Now, all of these identities are vital, but they are not our primary identity as human beings. Identification with these lesser identities, rather than with humanity's common spiritual identity, has resulted in the bigotry and bloodshed that has stained the pages of history, and unfortunately, this antiquated tribalism of identity politics continues today worse than ever. How fitting, then, that Baha'u'llah's first tablet is a reminder of our true common identity as having been made in the image and likeness of God, reminding us that the purpose of life is the raising of human consciousness. So the raising of our consciousness above its biological demands and false definitions and its imaginary lines of demarcation. Because everything that rises must converge. Baha'u'lláh exploded the tribalism of identity politics, not just the tribalism of racial identity, sexual identity, class politics, gender politics, the disease of nationalism, but also the tribalism of religion, of religious groups claiming they are superior to other religious groups. Baha'u'lláh was not sent to bring yet another religion to the world. He came to bring the truth about human identity. And in his 1839 tablet, or prayer, he highlights how early in history he declared that, quote, the world is but one country and mankind its citizens, pointing out that we are interconnected human family that share one precious homeland, and that if we turn the mirror of our hearts towards this new divine revelation and reflect the image and likeness of God through our love, our justice, truthfulness, fidelity, chastity, and generosity, then the rays of the sun, Baha'u'lláh assures us, are so great, is the light of unity, that it can illuminate the whole earth. So in light of Baha'u'llah's progressive teachings about human identity, how fitting and fascinating it was to learn, for me, that Baha'u'llah issued the world's first Emancipation Proclamation. And he did so not just philosophically, but as a personal action in his very own household. At the age of 22, he freed his father's enslaved African servants. I'll read a few sections of this brief tablet from the authorized translation, which I have attached as text in the description of this video. But first, I'd like to point out two English words that are used in the translation, which are not commonly used by us. The words thrall, T-H-R-A-L-L, and vassal, V-A-S-S-A-L. Both words are nouns defining someone who is in bondage or serfdom. Essentially, they're synonyms for an enslaved person. We may not use the word thrall today, but we do say enthralled. If we are enthralled by someone or something, we are captivated by them or captured by them. And the word vassal has a similar connotation of entrapment or enslavement. Now, Dr. Nader Saidi claims that this tablet was written for none other than the enslaved African servant named Esfandiar, whom Nabil and other historians have written about. Esfandiar, after being emancipated by Baha'u'llah, chose as a free man to stay on in Baha'u'llah's household. Abdul Baha tells us, quote, Esfandiar was the faithful servant of Baha'u'llah and was entrusted with his secrets. If a perfect man could be found in the world, that man was Esfandiar. He was the essence of love, radiant with sanctity, luminous with light. So here is an excerpt from Baha'u'llah's tablet or prayer in which he explains to God the basis for his emancipation of his father's enslaved African servant. Glorified art thou, O Lord my God. Behold how one slave hath stood at the door of another, seeking from him his freedom. And this, despite the fact that his owner is himself but thy thrall and thy servant. All kings are as vassals before the gate of thy grace, and all great ones are but feeble creatures within the court of thy glorious bounty. How then can this thrall claim for himself ownership of any other human being? Nay, his very existence before the court of thy might is a sin with which no other sin can compare, since glorified, immeasurably glorified art thou beyond every description and praise. O my God, since he hath asked this servant for his freedom, I call thee to witness at this moment that I verily have set him free in thy path, liberated him in thy name, and lifted the chains of shackles of servitude from his neck, that he may serve thee in the daytime and in the night season. while I pray that thou mayest never free mine own neck from the chain of thy servitude. This verily is my highest hope and supreme aspiration, and to this thou thyself art a mighty witness. How fitting that in this new day of the dawn of the oneness of humanity, the earliest Emancipation Proclamation ever written was composed by Baha'u'llah.